So in last week's video, we walked through the process of how I came up with a broad overarching research question. We established that the Falkland Islands lie some 300 miles off the southeastern coast of South America. At the time of European arrival in the 1760s, the wara was the only native land mammal in the islands. And that included humans. There weren't humans there at the time that Europeans got there either. So all of these pieces of this puzzle led me to ask the question of how and when did the wara arrive in the Falkland Islands? So at this point, I wasn't ready to just dive into an expedition to the Falklands. I needed to come up with more information about what was known about this whole system. So to start, I needed to come up with all of the different ways that the fox could have gotten to the islands, which you might have already done as well. I came up with 4 possibilities. The first, that it could have swum there. The second, that it might have floated there on a log, a piece of sea ice, or possibly an abandoned canoe. 3, it could have crossed on an ice bridge or a land bridge that may have formed back when there were big glaciers on the land and a lot less water in the oceans. Or 4, that possibly humans brought them over via canoe. So in all cases, I knew that not just one fox could have reached the islands, because only one fox can't establish a population all by itself. So I figured that I could probably cross out number 1, the idea that the fox might have swum there, because it would have been really difficult for a fox to swim that expansive, really large channel. The waters are really cold, the waves are really big, and I can't imagine what would cause a fox to look out at the open ocean and decide to go for a swim. I also felt that it was pretty safe to assume that the second scenario was also unlikely. The idea that the fox might have floated across on a piece of sea ice, wood, or a canoe. For the same reason, really, that swimming is unlikely. The waters are rough and cold, and it likely would have taken a long time for the fox to float to the islands, so it would have needed a source of fresh water and food. The third scenario, involving the fox crossing on a land bridge or an ice bridge, is more plausible than the first 2. The one question I have is, why would the fox be the only land mammal in the Falklands if there was a bridge connecting the mainland to the islands? It seems likely that if there had been a bridge at any given time, then there would be more animals than just the fox that would have crossed to the islands. So I chose to focus on the 4th scenario, which is the idea that possibly humans coming over from South America might have brought the fox to the islands. I was getting closer at this point to formulating a hypothesis, but I was still missing some of the pieces of a puzzle. First, I needed to know if the wara had even originated in South America. I read a paper that said that the wara's closest relative was a mainland species of fox that was found in South America. Really interestingly, I found that that relative shows up in all sorts of archaeological sites throughout South America, and in one case was actually found buried right alongside humans. What this means was that humans were interacting with the wara's relative in much the same way that we do with our dogs today. Second, I needed to know if humans in South America even had the technology or the capability of getting to the Falkland Islands. What I found from my research was that canoes and other sorts of marine technology show up in the archaeological record about 6,400 years ago. What this means was that humans at this point, and from this point on, had the ability to get to the Falkland Islands by some sort of watercraft like canoe. I also found out while I was doing my research that there's a very strong current that pushes around the tip of South America and directly at and around the Falkland Islands. What this means was that humans who were using canoes to hunt and fish in the open ocean could have possibly used this current to get to the Falkland Islands, either intentionally or perhaps unintentionally. Lastly, I needed to know if there was any evidence in the Falkland Islands to suggest that people had gotten there before Europeans were there. What I found was that several arrowheads had been found, 1 whalebone harpoon, and there were early journal accounts from explorers saying that they saw dugout canoes along the beaches of the Falklands. These are all really good indicators that humans may have arrived in the Falklands before Europeans got there. Doing research is a lot like putting together a puzzle. What I found out was that the wara's closest relative is a mainland species of fox that's found in archaeological sites all throughout South America, which means that it was likely closely interacting with humans. I also found out that humans in South America had canoe technology that shows up about 6,400 years ago in archaeological sites, which means that they had the capacity, or they had the ability to get from South America to the Falkland Islands. Third, I found that there is a really strong current called the Falklands Current that comes out around the southern tip of South America and flows directly at and around the Falklands. Fourth, I found that there have been a few artifacts found in the Falklands that suggest that humans may have gotten there before Europeans arrived. With all of this information, I could put together my hypothesis, which is that humans who had canoe technology in South America may have used the Falklands Current to intentionally, or perhaps unintentionally, arrive in the Falkland Islands and may have brought along the wara, or its closest relative. But the puzzle isn't complete. Doing background research can only get you so far. Now that I have my hypothesis, I could start figuring out what sort of data I needed to collect to begin unraveling the questions surrounding the wara.